Instead, invite Dr. Shruti Rai, who's Joint Director in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, uh, for a presentation on hazardous waste management and urban wetlands.
I'm not having any presentation, but of course I'll be giving the policy perspective on the particular issue, and it will be basically on a discussion mode that I will be preferring. Taking from Gopi where he talked about the actual ecological issues and actual wetlands. He has painted a very beautiful picture of what wetlands are and what they should be, what we are expecting in the urban wetlands. So going a little ahead from there, where we now need to see how actually these things which we see in terms of the restoration, or in terms of conservation, or in terms of stopping the reclamation of the wetland, how actually we can implement in our country. For the implementation part of it, and for actually making things happen, we actually need like in any other country, we need certain kind of policy, we need certain kind of regulations which should be there in the place, based upon which we can ensure that whatever just now Gopi has spoken about should be, we can actually ensure that we can ensure the implementation of the whole thing. So since we are focusing on the urban wetland, but I will be, the policy that we have presently in our country is not restricted to the urban wetland, but I will be talking about the general policy which is presently in force in the country with respect to conservation of wetlands in general. As far as wetland is concerned, we recently in 2010 only, Ministry of Environment has come up with this wetland conservation and management rules 2010. And this has come up under Environmental Protection Act, which we all know. I think by now you could have come to know that this is the umbrella act in our country under which all the major legislations pertaining to environment are formulated and are enforced. Even the penalty provisions, everything is drawn from the act itself. Before 2010, as such, we didn't have any regulations in our country. So major destruction that we have seen during that time is because of the reason that though we had a National Wetland Conservation Program, and we had a separate division, but there was no as such legislation through which we can say that don't do it. You cannot do it. You have to first say that you have to stop it, you cannot do it. For saying that, you should have a concrete legislation, which was not in existence before 2010. So under, before 2010, I mean, how government was doing it and how they were managing to enforce certain kind of management of the wetland was just through one program that is still in existence, that is National Wetland Conservation Program, which was being implemented through ministry, under which ministry was giving financial and technical support for conservation of the wetlands, depending upon the proposals that we get from the states. Now, the proposals that we get from the states, of course, that will be from some kind of nodal department. And if, for example, the university wants or want to identify, they have to approach through that nodal department to highlight the issue in that particular wetland. And if department is convinced, then that kind of proposal is sent to the ministry. We evaluate that proposal and we provide certain kind of financial and technical assistance. And also we maintain a list of wetlands depending upon the proposal from the state government, which identifies the wetlands which are considered to be wetlands which are important and are identified under the National Wetland Conservation Program, and which indicates that they need to be protected, they need to be conserved, and we cannot take up any kind of developmental activities within the wetland without without certain kind of provisions specially being made for that. But those things were not concretely in the form of a legislation. Those things were in form of a guidelines or document which was expected to be done. Now, subsequently, based upon our experiences and looking into the status of the wetlands with reference to this wetland conservation program, it was for a long time pending, and it was envisaged that we need to have a concrete policy since all kind of this kind of rampant destruction and reclamation of wetlands which are going around in the country need to be stopped. So the ministry came up with these rules. Now this rules is actually legislation now. It's an act now. So now since we have a rule, we have a legislation. So with reference to that legislation, now action can be taken if somebody is violating the rules. Now, what is the rule actually? It is just like the purpose during that time was not to have extensive framework. So probably many of the stakeholders might not be very happy that it doesn't encompass this, and many of the things might not be getting projected. But during that time, the purpose was to let this ball start rolling so that at least instead of waiting for all the stakeholders and to satisfy everybody, we should have something immediately to take, to be able to take certain actions if we want to do that. So that's why this is a brief rule which was formulated and which is now under implementation. What rules basically prescribe is that it gives the list of the regulated activities, those activities which are actually prohibited in the wetlands. Then it prescribes list of certain restricted activities which can be undertaken in those wetlands with approval of the state government, certain kind of directions from the state government. Then it also prescribes the wetlands which are kind of wetlands which are regulated under these rules. And the wetlands which are regulated, basically those which are already identified under Ramsar Convention, and which is also listed in this rule. These are 25 number of wetlands which got the implementation, which need to be where this rule need to be implemented immediately. That means whatever activities are now prescribed under this rule, whether they are prohibited or restricted, in those 25 wetlands, it has to be followed with immediate effect. The day this rule came into force, that was in 2010. Subsequently, there are other list of wetlands, which doesn't give the list and name of the wetlands, but it defines what kind of wetland will be part of these rules, which gives like wetlands which are in protected areas like national park, wildlife sanctuaries, or which are in ecosystem zone, or which have certain kind of heritage significance, or which has certain kind of significance in terms of this beauty or the recreational activity it provides. So those kind of wetland can be taken up for notification under these rules. Then we have those wetlands also which may not be listed, but we have an authority which has been constituted under rule, and authority can any time identify those wetlands and ask the activities to be restricted under the rules. So basically this gives the list of those kind of wetlands. Then these 25 wetlands are already identified, but what about the other wetlands? What's the process of notifying? Now those wetlands where we want these activities to be regulated, those need to be notified under the rules. So what's the process of notifying those wetlands? The process basically is that we have a central regulatory authority. State government is supposed to, immediately after coming into force of the, this rule, they are supposed to provide a brief document, we call it a brief document presently in the rule, where they have to provide a list of wetlands that they want to be notified based upon the criteria that we have identified, and they have to give a brief of those kind of wetlands where they will be giving their geographical locations, then zone of influence and other details about whatever that biodiversity and rest of the details about those wetlands, and they have to submit it to the authority. Now, subsequent to the submission of their proposal, what comes is the major role of is the research institutes or university like this, where the rule says that that document will be shared with some of the known university research organizations or somebody who is involved into wetland kind of research, and they will be given certain time limit, which is I think 90 days or something, where they will be giving their comments on that document which has been submitted by state government, and they will be recommending that research institute or university which has been identified by the authority. They will be recommending those wetlands, whether they want and whether they think that it is actually some certain kind of actions need to be taken over there, and what is their recommendation with respect to the notification of those wetlands under the rule. That recommendation goes to the authority again. Authority will be reviewing it subsequently, and then based upon the state government document, the recommendation of that research organization, they will be putting up, they will be taking certain decision that will be notified for the public comments. Public comments means it will go on the website. And since wetlands, now we know how many stakeholders are there for the wetlands, how many people do get affected. We have local people, we have industries who might be having certain kind of stake. So all the stakeholders who are somehow getting affected through that notification, they will be having full right to give their comments, whether they want it to be and they don't want to be, or what's the reason, whatever they comments they want to give. And after 60 days, those comments will be compiled, and then the authority will be recommending to the ministry. Ministry then will be taking, the minister will be taking a final call. They will be recommending based upon all those things that they want it to be notified under the rule, and so that wetland will be notified for conservation under this particular rule. Once it is notified, then again all those provisions which are presently under the rule will be applicable to those wetlands. So now with all this policy and everything under the implementation now, I don't know how has been the implementation, probably Gopi or others can highlight better how it's actually working in the field. But of course, I can say that at least we have something. If you want to take up under RTI, Gopi, any day you can take it up. Earlier there was nothing, so at least we can, we have something on that. Now, shifting from here, and I will, if I have to, we have to focus a little bit more on urban wetlands. Then what I believe is that conservation and other things doesn't appear to be applicable to me as of now, because now the situation, as Gopi has already highlighted, in Delhi we are not left with any wetland. So what we are planning to conserve is a thing that we have to think about. So in terms of urban wetland, I think more important part is now coming to the remediation or restoration, where we have to, we know the conditions where now most of the wetlands have been reclaimed in major cities. So based upon all our experiences, now it's the time with reference to urban wetland that we identify some of those areas or wetland and go for certain kind of restoration, remediation, whatever way we think it's appropriate. And as Gopi has highlighted just now, that many of these wetlands in the past have been used for dumping of waste, either it is municipal waste, hazardous waste, I think mostly hazardous waste by the industries. So these have become, these are now mostly a contaminated sites rather than a wetland. If we talk about under urban wetland, we can't call them wetland as such. I think these are contaminated sites at present rather than wetland. We cannot give the terminology now, that we should not be using that terminology. These are contaminated sites. And now the approach should be moving from there where we can bring it back to calling them as wetland. So if we are talking about those contaminated sites and now we want to bring it back to the wetland, then comes the role of remediation, some kind of restoration through some kind of remediation. Because in these areas, what I believe is my perception is that only ecological or biological kind of stand won't work. We will have to go for certain kind of hardcore remediation, use of hardcore remediation technologies. And again, the issue comes is presently we don't have any legislation on remediation. So again, that's a drawback. So how to move forward with that? Of course, ministry is emphasizing very soon legislation on remediation of this polluted site. We have one World Bank project under which we are trying to draft one national program for rehabilitation of polluted sites. So there, again, the process will be like where we identify, this is a tentative process that I am just sharing with you, where certain kind of areas will be, contaminated areas will be identified. Then there will be need for preparing certain kind of action plan, remediation action plan need to be prepared for that. Now the issue will come that whether those areas are orphan areas, major problem, or it is owned by somebody. If it is owned by somebody, somebody is owning it, I think it will be easier, we can pinpoint that person, we can ask them to make the payment for remediation. But what's if it's an orphan area, nobody comes to own it, like some kind of wetland area, which was never owned by anybody, but had been used as a dumping ground, and it is now completely a contaminated site. How to go about that? Then come the problem of fund for the remediation. So we have certain system in US EPA where we call it super fund kind of system they have created, where they use that fund for remediation of these kind of sites. We are planning, we are thinking on the similar line to have certain kind of fund and to develop certain kind of structure. So probably in near future with this kind of policy, which will be very useful in supporting the wetland legislation, we will be able to better tackle the urban wetlands as such. And I think after certain kind of hardcore remediation technology, then will come the role of the ecological restoration. So hopefully very soon we will be having something with us where we will be able to take forward some action oriented thing with respect to the urban wetland. I think that's, I would like to stop here itself, and we can move forward to others so that we can have much better idea and we can have